Picture this. A couple of years ago, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by things I had purchased on impulse. There were scented candles I barely used, decorative items I didn't need, and household upgrades that solved problems that never existed. Earlier that day, I had reviewed my credit card statement and realized I had spent more than $4,000 in a single month. Then I checked my savings account. The balance was just over $800. What made the situation even more frustrating was that I wasn't struggling with unemployment or low wages. I earned around $63,000 annually and had been making over $50,000 for years. Yet, despite years of income, I had accumulated almost nothing meaningful financially. The money kept flowing through my hands without leaving any lasting impact. That same week, I came across an article discussing a Japanese woman named Fumiko Chiba and a traditional budgeting method called kakeibo, a system that has existed for more than a century. Hidden inside that article was a detail that completely changed the way I thought about money. These habits weren't new financial hacks, they weren't clever investment tricks. They were practices that Japanese families had quietly passed down from generation to generation. Grandparents taught them to their parents, parents taught them to children. Families used them consistently over decades to build stability and wealth without attracting attention. What fascinated me even more was how different Japan's relationship with money seemed compared to the culture I grew up in. In America, spending often acts as proof of success. A new car, a larger home, expensive clothing, luxury vacations. These things are celebrated and displayed. Financial success is frequently visible. In Japan, the opposite tendency often exists. Wealth is not something that needs to be announced. Restraint is respected. Saving money isn't viewed as deprivation. It is viewed as responsibility and wisdom. That contrast forced me to ask an uncomfortable question. What if the problem wasn't my income? What if the problem was my philosophy? The paradox. How can a country with lower average incomes maintain significantly stronger savings habits than a nation with much higher earnings? How can financial principles developed more than 100 years ago remain effective despite modern technology, budgeting apps, artificial intelligence, and endless financial advice available online? And perhaps most importantly, how did applying some of these principles help transform my savings from a few $100s into nearly $20,000 within a year without increasing my income? The answer reveals something many people overlook. Building wealth is often less about earning more and more about thinking differently. The numbers tell the story. The contrast between financial cultures becomes striking when you examine the data. In the United States, personal savings rates often hover around 4%. In contrast, Japanese households have historically embraced savings rates closer to 20% as a cultural norm. At first glance, that 16% difference doesn't seem dramatic, but time transforms small differences into enormous outcomes. Imagine two people earning the same $60,000 salary. One saves 4%, which equals $2,400 annually. The other saves 20%, which equals $12,000 annually. Invested consistently over decades, the difference grows into hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The outcome isn't driven by luck, it isn't driven by intelligence, it isn't driven by secret investment opportunities. It's driven by behavior. The same pattern appears elsewhere. American households waste enormous amounts of food every year. Clothing, electronics, furniture, and household items are frequently discarded long before they stop functioning. Consumer debt continues reaching record levels. Meanwhile, many Japanese households follow habits specifically designed to reduce waste, preserve resources, and encourage mindful spending. These small differences compound just like investments. The idea of quiet wealth. The philosophy behind these habits can be described as quiet wealth building. This approach doesn't focus on flashy investments, overnight success stories, or dramatic financial transformations. Instead, it focuses on something much simpler: making thoughtful decisions consistently, respecting money as a valuable resource, creating systems that encourage awareness, allowing wealth to grow gradually in the background. Quiet wealth doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't require constant proof. It simply accumulates over time. Habit 1. Kakeibo. The first habit is kakeibo, a handwritten budgeting system developed more than a century ago. The process begins with 4 simple categories: income, fixed expenses, savings goals, discretionary spending. Every day, purchases are recorded manually and categorized into groups such as necessities, wants, educational expenses, cultural experiences, and unexpected costs. This sounds almost too simple to matter, but the power comes from writing. Modern spending is often frictionless. You tap a card, a transaction occurs. Seconds later, you've forgotten about it. Writing forces awareness. When you physically record a purchase, you engage with it differently. A $40 food delivery order no longer disappears into a stream of digital transactions. It becomes a conscious decision documented on paper. That small act creates accountability. Many people discover that once they start recording purchases consistently, spending naturally decreases because awareness increases. In my own experience, I became far more conscious of where my money was going within just a few weeks. The notebook cost almost nothing. The impact was enormous. Habit 2. Mottainai. One of the most powerful Japanese concepts is mottainai. There is no perfect English translation. It represents a feeling of regret associated with waste, not merely because something costs money, but because something valuable was not fully appreciated or utilized. Food waste is a perfect example. Many households purchase groceries with good intentions, only to throw away a significant percentage before consuming them. When I started tracking food waste honestly, I realized how much money was literally ending up in the trash. Meal planning changed everything. Instead of shopping based on cravings, I started planning meals around what already existed in my kitchen. My grocery costs fell dramatically. The principle extends beyond food. Mottainai encourages repairing instead of replacing, maintaining instead of upgrading, using something completely before seeking something new. It transforms consumption from automatic behavior into intentional behavior. Habit 3. Hara-hachi bu. This concept originated in Okinawa and translates roughly to eating until 80% full. At first glance, it appears to be nutritional advice, but its deeper lesson applies everywhere. Leave room, don't operate at maximum capacity, maintain a margin. Applied financially, hara-hachi bu means living on roughly 80% of income and directing the remaining 20% towards savings and investments. The beauty of this system is psychological. Once money automatically leaves your spending account, it gradually disappears from your mental reality. You adapt, your lifestyle adjusts, and the savings begin growing quietly in the background. The difference between saving 4% and 20% over decades is staggering. What appears to be a small change today becomes life-changing later. Habit 4. Kaizen. Kaizen means continuous improvement. Rather than pursuing dramatic transformations, Kaizen emphasizes small, consistent progress. Instead of trying to overhaul your finances overnight, improve one area slightly. Reduce dining out by 10%. Increase retirement contributions by 1%. Negotiate a bill. Cancel one subscription. Find a cheaper alternative. Each improvement feels manageable. Because the changes are small, resistance remains low. Over time, however, dozens of tiny improvements create extraordinary results. Financial transformation often happens this way, not through one major decision, through hundreds of small decisions repeated consistently. Hobbit 5. Ikigai. Ikigai is often described as a reason for being, a purpose, a source of meaning. Applied to finances, Ikigai answers a question many budgets never address. What is this money actually for? When your financial goals connect to something meaningful, spending decisions become easier. A person saving for early retirement behaves differently than someone saving without purpose. A parent building financial security for their family makes different choices than someone simply trying to spend less. Purpose creates clarity, and clarity reduces temptation. Without purpose, budgets feel restrictive. With purpose, budgets feel empowering. Habit 6. Wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is the appreciation of imperfection. A scratched table still serves its purpose. A repaired sweater remains useful. A cracked bowl can still hold food. Modern consumer culture often encourages dissatisfaction. Products become obsolete not because they stop working, but because something newer exists. Wabi-sabi challenges this mindset. It encourages appreciation rather than replacement, contentment rather than constant upgrading. People who learn to appreciate what they already own often discover that they need far less than they thought. And that realization creates enormous financial benefits over time. Habit 7. The annual reset. Once each year, conduct a complete financial review, examine every subscription, review insurance policies, analyze recurring charges, evaluate investments, inspect automatic payments. Many people discover dozens or even hundreds of dollars, leaving their accounts monthly without providing meaningful value. An annual review eliminates financial leaks before they become long-term drains. Small recurring costs often cause more damage than occasional large purchases. Habit 8. Save first. One of the most powerful principles in Japanese financial culture is saving before spending. Most people spend first and save whatever remains. The problem is that very little usually remains. Saving first reverses the sequence. Money automatically moves towards savings and investments before discretionary spending begins. Over time, spending adjusts to fit the remaining amount. The process becomes automatic. No constant decision-making is required. No monthly willpower battles occur. The system simply works. Habit 9. Building free leisure. Many people assume enjoying life requires spending money. Japanese culture often offers a different perspective. Walking, reading, gardening, cooking, visiting parks, spending time in nature, talking with friends. These activities provide enjoyment without requiring significant spending. When entertainment becomes less dependent on purchases, financial pressure decreases naturally. You don't feel deprived, you simply discover alternatives. Habit 10. Honest reflection. The final habit is regular self-reflection. Once a month, spend time reviewing financial decisions honestly. What worked? What didn't? What habits improved? What mistakes repeated themselves? The goal isn't guilt. The goal is awareness. Reflection closes the feedback loop. Without reflection, habits stagnate. With reflection, improvement accelerates. Why these habits work? The remarkable thing about these principles is that none of them require a higher income. None require advanced investing knowledge. None require extraordinary intelligence. They work because they change behavior. The average person earning a moderate income can dramatically improve financial outcomes simply by adopting a different philosophy. Over decades, these habits create hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional wealth. Sometimes more, not because of complexity, because of consistency. the real challenge. The biggest obstacle isn't mathematics, it's culture. Many societies encourage consumption. Advertisements constantly promote dissatisfaction. Social media rewards visible spending. People are taught to display success rather than quietly build it. These Japanese habits move in the opposite direction. They encourage patience, awareness, restraint, purpose, long-term thinking, and that difference changes everything. The final question. The version of myself sitting at that kitchen table years ago didn't need a raise. I didn't need a side hustle. I didn't need a miracle investment opportunity. What I needed was a different understanding of money. Once the philosophy changed, the habits changed. Once the habits changed, the results followed. These principles have survived for generations because they work. They survived economic downturns, cultural shifts, technological revolutions, and changing lifestyles. They continue working today for the same reason they worked a century ago. They align behavior with long-term success. You don't necessarily need more income to build wealth. You may already earn enough to begin. What you need is awareness, a simple system, a clear purpose, and the willingness to pay attention to your money instead of wondering where it went. That is where financial transformation begins. And for most people, that's exactly where it has always begun.